I think today Casey's going to show us how to do unified position representation. And by that, I think that means we're going to clean up that tile map system that we've been chipping away at and just make it a little bit cleaner than the place we've left it off in, and try and make it easier to make sense of, because I'm certainly still not quite there yet with a good intuitive sense of what the heck is going on. But before we jump into starting that, I left this little note here to myself to learn more about some of Odin's compiler switches. And to that end, I wonder if I can just, what is it, like build help or something like that? Will that work? So I was looking around in here at the output from Odin's build help, dump, show you all the compiler switches. And I think actually right at the top somewhere, yeah, we get a nice little list of optimization switches here. And I wanted to figure out a little bit more there. I did it again, didn't I? Is that working? Yeah. Okay. Wouldn't be another stream if there weren't more stupid technical mishaps. Make sure that's, yeah, I think we're good. Anyway, like I was saying, I looked inside of the Odin repo because I wanted to understand what this debug switch does a little bit better. And that's messed up. What is all of this? Whoa. I have no idea what just happened. Let's just try that again. And let's try that again. Here we go. So I looked around inside of the Odin language repo, try and learn more about this switch, and it turns out, where was that? I think it was over here. The creator left himself a little note that says, when building with the debug switch but not specifying an optimization level, we get, none by default. So therefore, if we pass the debug switch to the compiler, like I was doing before yesterday, if we roll this back, passing this switch in means that we are also implicitly saying that we want no optimization done to this build. But, and this is kind of just me taking a stab in the dark and saying I want to do a slightly more optimized build for speed. And if we look inside of those switches, I don't know why I'm way over there. We look inside of these switches for optimization, we get none, and then minimal is the default if we don't. So when we took off the, what's a better way to lay this out here? I'm just gonna do that, get rid of that. So when we took off the none, we were now implicitly compiling with minimal optimization. And I don't know what the corresponding flag is here in the Odin compiler switches for /02. I could probably find it, or I could probably ask somebody in the Odin Discord and find out that way. But I'm just going to go for speed because I want to go fast. And if for some reason that causes me problems, then so be it. But what's nice is I can actually leave that debug switch in there, which I'm going to do. And I need to apply this to my Darwin script as well, but I can do that not wasting stream time because I do want to get into the actual code. what did I just do? So let's go ahead and also change the game build script. So now we're gonna use the speed optimization switch, and we're going to add the debug switch, because all this does is implicitly say we want no optimizations done, but I want to go fast, so I'm going to say, you know, use the speed switch there. And I think that will be all right. Basically, and if I go back to that note, you know, if we use no optimizations, the debug symbol generation, you know, the output to the PDB, I assume, to the PDB is going to be more usable if we're using a debugger, which I'm not doing yet, but I certainly intend to. I just don't know when I'll get around to that. But I have a plan. I've been digging around in what spare time I have to figure out the route I want to go there, and I think I've got a decent plan to start, you know, trying to execute on. I just don't know when I'm going to do that. And like I was saying, I think yesterday, I'm just going to wait until I get to that point where it just feels very painful not using a debugger. And I got to that point, I don't know when I was writing all this stuff in Zig, but I could not be bothered to figure out how to use Zig with a debugger. And so I just painfully went with print debugging until I was able to get to where I left off with the Zig code base that I've worked on. So we'll see. I'm going to probably have to switch sooner just because I'm streaming this, working on this project in Odin, and that's just by virtue of the fact that I'm adding another thing that I'm trying to multitask on. It's going to make me experience more pain. But then again, Odin is proving to be a bit easier to work in. So, you know, it might wash out to be the same amount of pain in the end without a debugger. But imagine how much faster I could go if I got good at using a debugger. We'll see. To be continued on that front. But anyways, so I'm feeling good about this. I know a little bit more about Odin's compiler switches. The good thing is here, again, I can combine the debug switch and still do some optimization for the purposes of like printing stuff out inside of my when Odin debug blocks. So if I come into main here, I no longer have to say, what is it, and false to block out these Odin debug blocks that I don't want to have happen. And actually, I think I'm going to take that debug switch off, because this right here, well, I thought I could do not Odin debug, like when we're not in debug mode, then it would, or when we're not passing the debug switch, then it would then execute this block, but that doesn't work. I had to still say or true here. So now I don't have to dirty up all those other blocks, you know, with this and false thing, you know, because this says if we're in debug mode, or if we're compiling in debug mode, I guess, then we'd want to execute all this stuff inside of this block. But because I'm just saying and false, you know, this can never evaluate to true, so none of this stuff ever works, regardless of what mode we're compiling in. So this just cleans that up, and it's a lot less nasty. But I can't do the same thing here. But the point is that if I want to compile not in debug mode, but I still want to see the output from this block because I want to see what the FPS is doing or whatever, then I can just, you know, say when Odin debug, or if this is just true. So this whole thing will evaluate to true, and I can see my FPS. So I think that's a pretty good place to leave that off in. I'll just take the debug switch off. And did I already do it for the other one? I think I just got turned around there. There we go. So that way when I compile here, I should get my FPS, and we're compiling faster. And I'm hoping it's approximating, you know, the level of optimization that Casey's getting when he passes that O2 switch, but who knows. Hey there, Nutella. Welcome back. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into some game code again. Another thing that we're going to run into here really fast is the fact that on our tile map, actually it's our position structs here. One thing that I realized after wrapping up what little bit of code we wrote yesterday was that this type right here, this int, is not a 32-bit integer. It defaults to, or it just evaluates to, the register size, which would be 64 bits on this machine that I'm using. So I'm not sure how I want to handle that. It kind of feels like, because he's using, I'm pretty sure anyway, he's using 32-bit integers. I mean, is he even, I think he's just calling them all ints. I don't think he does, you know, int 32, or maybe he does. But for his machine, I think int just evaluates to a 32-bit sized integer, a 32-bit signed integer. So I'm really not sure, but this is clearly going to cause problems to do that when we do that packing. I could just make every single int in this project an int32, but that's going to cause me to have to make a whole bunch of changes everywhere that I don't want to eat up time doing on stream. So I think I might just roll with it, and then when we start to pack these, we'll just leave this one, you know, whatever we call this. It might just be plain tile X and tile Y. Whatever we call it, we'll just use that. We'll use I32 for that, and then we'll cast wherever need be to get things to where they need to be. So is Odin like a coding language or program? Odin is a programming language, yeah. It was started by a guy who goes by the handle Ginger Bill. He works for a company called Jenga FX, and they do like special effects for I think games and movies, probably something like that. I haven't dug too much into what it is they do, but he started Odin, I'm pretty sure, while working for Jenga FX, and he was just looking for a way to do things that is better than the C programming language. And so he started building something that would make it easier to do his job, that would be more fun to program in. And over time, his employer just adopted his language. And so it's being used in production at the company he works for, and maybe other places too. I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, I have no idea about coding. Most of my buddies are software engineers or coding people, and I never understand it. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty dense domain, right? And there's lots of areas of interest to specialize in. And for my part, I've always just been in the sort of web developer world, you know, for pretty much the entirety of my career, to some extent or another, because that's such a huge swath of the industry is web programming and websites and web development, all that stuff. Because every business, just about, right, needs a website these days. It's hard to do business and not have to deal with the internet in some way, shape, or form. So there's just a lot more jobs in that industry versus games, right? And not only that, but the games industry is very competitive. But I think something that's been drawing me to games programming for a while now is the fact that it is so competitive. Sticky keys, shut the hell up. The fact that it is so competitive, and therefore, you know, the best of the best tend to drift more towards that domain. And that doesn't mean that there aren't incredible programmers that are working in web development. It just means that I think I'm more interested in the work in general that is done in games programming. And it's partially because some of the tools that have come to be ubiquitous in the web world make me sick to my stomach to have to work with on a day-to-day basis. I'm kind of just, I'm really fatigued by web programming is what it comes down to. So this channel is like a vehicle for me to pursue games programming. And even if I never become a professional game dev, I think all of the things that I'm learning here will still be helpful to me if I only ever get paid to do web dev, if that makes sense. Gotcha. The closest I ever got to understanding this stuff was attending a hacking con called ShmookCon with my buddies. Huh, I've never heard of that. Hey, Devil. So anyway, with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump in, get today started. I'm hoping I can keep this stream as short as possible, but it's really all dependent on how quickly I'm able to keep up with Casey, which, you know, depending on the actual material we're working on, it could be really hard to keep up and go about as fast. I feel the same about the fatigue about my current job, but just got a new position that's more in line with my stuff. So def get the fatigue. Yeah, for a long time I felt fatigue. Things are kind of turning a page right now, strangely enough, as it is. You know, for the longest time I was like, man, I want to do something that really interests me again. My day job just doesn't cut it. It feels very dull at times. And then out of nowhere, some things changed over the last year, and I was put in a position to really kind of redefine the way we're doing things at work, and it's put us in a position to potentially start doing things in a way that is much more fun for me to do the work that I do in. Remains to be seen just how that takes shape, especially I think I'll have a better idea around the turn of the new year, because that's just how slow things can move with a big, enterprise software company. And the company I work for isn't even that big. I mean, we're certainly not Microsoft where we have tens of thousands of employees. So, yeah, I hope things take shape and take a good shape as things continue to change. My biggest fear for a long time was that things would go in a worse direction. As bad as things are, they can always get worse, right? So I was like fighting to if things can't get better, let's at least fight to make sure they don't get worse. And it turns out things might actually get better, which is just not the outcome I expected, but maybe I should have expected it, because that's what I was working towards for a long time. And it turns out that if you actually work hard towards the thing that you want to make happen, eventually reality just starts to take shape around that outcome, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's enough talking. Let's go ahead and write some code.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Handmade Hero, day 32 of the show, where we create an entire game from scratch using absolutely nothing but our own bare typing fingers. So far, we have basically created a Win32 platform layer, and we are in the midst of designing our engine architecture. We're doing that by writing some exploratory code on how we want to create sort of our tile map underlaid system, and then we're going to be dealing with how we want to kind of do animations and rendering and that sort of stuff. So we're kind of in exploratory phase right now, and we've got a bunch of stuff to do, so I'm going to try and dive into that relatively quickly. But first, let me say the obligatory: if you pre-ordered the game and are trying to follow along at home with the source code, you will note that today is the day 32, so you want to unzip day 31 source code out of that giant zip file that has all the days in it. So go ahead and unzip day 31, and then you will have the source code that is exactly the same source code that I have and am starting with now. Now, if you're anything like me, then basically you thought last night's stream was absolutely unproductive and meandering. I was basically talking about all the stuff that we had to do, and I did not actually really get to do anything. And I don't know about you guys, but that always kind of leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. And so hopefully tonight we will be able to actually do some of the stuff that we were talking about, so we won't have to go to bed feeling like a loser, because that's never fun, as you know. Anyway.
I don't know if I felt like a loser. I felt like I was spared the pain of having to program when I was just out of it. I was really out of it yesterday. In fact, it was yesterday where it was like the culmination of a lot of months of work, and I had this meeting at work where it was like, I'm going to present some ideas to some people outside of my team, and based on whether or not they care to hear those ideas or they think those ideas are good, could really impact my mood. And not only did I not face resistance, but I got a lot of affirmation that the direction I'm trying to take things in is really good. And it was like, oh my God, all these months of wondering where the hell this is going to go, and expecting all of these negative outcomes, and then your expectations are subverted. It doesn't mean that everything's rosy from here on out. There's certainly a lot of ground left to tread, much in the same way that we're a long ways off from making a game that anybody wants to play. But even so, it's a big step in the right direction. And I was just like kind of in disbelief all day after that meeting yesterday. So, but we got to keep moving forward.
Let's take a look at what we were doing. Essentially, we had gotten to the point on Friday, actually, where I was sort of exploring how to do these tile map things, and we had ended up in a place where we had this sort of concept of a canonical position. It had a tile map X and a tile map Y that looked up into a set of tile maps, and then a tile X and a tile Y that were the tile indices inside those tile maps. And then finally, there was a relative offset. And what I was thinking over the weekend and what I explained yesterday was that really this is kind of just too much work. There's really no need for both of these, because we don't need 64 bits of tile addressing here like we've got. Really what we could do is use a single 32-bit integer to store the tile X and tile Y, and just assume that the tile map part is some portion of that integer, the high bits of that integer. And so what I really wanted...
So it sure looks like he's using, now that I pay attention, it looks like he's using 32-bit sized integers everywhere. And so I probably will just have to switch over to using those completely specifically. I was hoping I wouldn't have to, because like if I'm iterating over a loop, for example, these indices in a range are going to be ints. So they're going to be a 64-bit sized integer. And that just means I'm going to have to do casting where it involves these member variables on these structs that happen to be 32-bit sized integers. So it's just not something I was looking forward to having to deal with, but I think we can get away with just doing it, using them enough during this stream, and then I can clean it all up off the air, and that way we can just kind of move seamlessly, hopefully, onto the next day.
To do is I really wanted to turn these, both of those sort of into this sort of thing where they were packed. So instead of having all of these, I wanted to get rid of these guys up here, and I wanted to switch to
not only does he make them 32-bit, but they're going to be unsigned. Got it.
just using one unsigned version for both the tile X and the tile Y, and then this relative stuff would just be relative to whatever the tile was. Now, I'm not 100% sure about this. I'm pretty sure about this part, although there are some trade-offs, but I'm not sure about what these should be relative to. Someone on the stream yesterday actually was talking about the fact that could we make them relative to the tile pages themselves, the things that are sort of going to store the tiles in them in chunks, and I think there could be good reasons why we might want to do that. However, I don't really know offhand what the right thing to do here is. And so I'm going to proceed assuming that these are relative to the tile, and we'll just kind of go.
Did I say M32? If I said M32, I meant U32. Or if you heard M32, you might have heard int. Or if you thought you heard M, maybe I said that. I have no idea. I'm talking so much during these streams that I have no idea what I'm saying sometimes, and I'll watch a little clip back of myself, and I'll be like, what the hell was I trying to say when I was going off about that? But int 32, yeah, integer, 32-bit sized integer. Coding with a rifle though, it's incomprehensible, right? Because if you were taking like what would you do? Like either you'd have like the buttstock and you'd be like jamming on the keys, or with the end of the barrel, you're just poking each key individually. It sounds completely ridiculous, but maybe a rifle-shaped keyboard. Anyway.
From there, and if it turns out that as we kind of get a little further that it looks like maybe it would be smarter to make them relative to the tile page, then we will. And again, that's exactly why we're doing this code. We're trying to explore and see what the right design decisions are, rather than making a bunch of design decisions up front and then finding out that they're wrong later. So we're trying to go, sort of a nice slow build from the ground up kind of approach that makes everything work properly, instead of a sort of make decisions and then implement a ton of stuff and then only later find out that it's busted. So what I want to do is I want to drive towards this because I just felt this was a little too excessive. But of course, we have to kind of figure out how we would actually make this work. Now, if we go back and look, in fact, I can sort of say, make these into something here that won't compile at all. You can sort of see that we've got lots of places, right, where we are using these. There's just tons and tons and tons and tons of places that sort of rely on this stuff because we wrote the code necessary to sort of do all the tile map positioning and stuff. So what we would like to do, essentially, is sort of see if we can sort of move that code over into something that would be working with a new way of doing things where you're always talking about these canonical positions. Now, what I want to point out here, because this is the first time we've kind of done this, is this is a large step. So typically when you're doing architecture work like this, you've got small steps and you've got large steps, and most of the steps that we did before were like compression steps. They were small steps of like taking something that worked and just sort of making, pulling out some common code and reusing it, right? But what we're doing here is we're reconsidering one of the ways to do something because we think we found a more efficient way. And so this is a little bit of a larger step in the code base, right? It's very much sort of a lateral movement rather than something where we're just kind of going to do a trivial pullout of something. And so this is a little bit of a larger step, and they are a little bit harder to make. But you shouldn't be afraid of making them. That's why we made this code really simple, really flexible, really easy, and basic, is because we want to have the freedom to change it around like this, and we don't want a lot of stuff baked in. So it's okay, and we haven't spent a lot of time debugging things. We haven't spent a lot of time optimizing anything. So it's okay to go in and delete some of that code because this was just code to play around with, and that's okay. And what you would ideally like to do as much as possible is always try to make as many large moves as you can when the code is sort of like early and not that much time has been spent on it, because then you're not losing that much work. So this is exactly the kind of time when we want to make these kind of moves. Okay, so if I take a look here at the stuff that we've gotten, we have that get canonical position thing, right? And the thing about get canonical position was that essentially we were using it in a lot of places because we had backed ourselves into a corner using pixels for everything, right? We're constantly in this sort of situation where we have just pixels coming in, and like for the player, for example, if we look out at how we were storing the player, we were constantly having this problem of storing, like, okay, there's a tile map X and a tile map Y, and then there's the offset relative to the tile map and all that sort of stuff. But if we were to actually sort of move, if we, could we sort of start to trim out this code by just moving to storing these canonical positions directly, right? And so one question that I have maybe right off the bat is, could I do that step first without actually changing to the 32-bit thing? Could I maybe do that step first as an easy step towards moving towards the 32-bit thing? Like move everything over to using the canonical positions first. So what would happen if I did that? What would happen if I went in here and said, all right, because you can see we have a to-do here that I even said, could this be using canonical position? So if I have canonical position, that's just player P or something, where's the player, right? If I have that, what would I do here? What could I do? What would the code look like if it always was working with that instead? So instead of initializing the player X and the player Y directly, now we've got a player P, and it's one of these canonical positions. So the canonical position has in it the tile map X. We know that's just we were just starting him off on that initial tile map, that one up in the corner, right? So tile maps.
Okay, so gradually moving in this direction he's talking about, where we just want the coordinate stuff as far as the tile map goes to be less insane. Not that it's really all that insane, it's just it's unwieldy enough that it's hard to reason about without spending too much time thinking about it. And this is in spite of the fact that I've been trying to take my time here and really make sure that I understand what it is I'm doing and why I'm doing it as I'm making changes. But once we start adding more stuff into the game here, obviously, we want it to be that much easier to understand if we can. I can't imagine shooting in Morse code and then converting that. I mean, on the other hand, there's like some weird gameplay mechanic idea in there, right? That could be kind of fun to work with, like a video game that helps you learn Morse code or something to shoot guns, or, you know, basically the inverse of what you're saying. All right, Intel, have a good workout. I still need to do mine later.
Map X, tile map Y, and then the tile X and the tile Y were in here as well. Is this? So tile relative X to tile, we had already done it so that it was relative to the corner of the tile, I guess. So that's kind of handy. So basically what we can say there is, all right, the tile relative X, you know, is maybe something something sort of trivial. I don't know, just we'll talk about that in 1 second later, since we haven't really touched that much. But let's say that this is, I don't know, it's 5, because this is all still in pixels. We haven't actually fixed things yet. Remember I talked yesterday about wanting fixes to not be in pixels. We haven't actually done that yet. All right, so, you know, maybe we set it to the tile X and tile Y is 3, 3. I don't actually know what's in 3, 3. Let's see, that's 0, 0, that's 1, 1, that's 2, 2, that's 3, 3. Well, it should be open, so that seems like a reasonable place to stick our player down for now. So I'm going to go ahead and compile that, and that should initialize properly, I think. So then when we do the get tile map now, we're just talking about player P, tile map X, and player P, tile map Y, and that'll get the tile map out of the world. And let's see what else we've got here.
Well, now we're just chasing down all these compiler errors. I'm kind of confused. It looks like he took this stuff out, but then I saw it was still in there. No, yeah, he just wiped that out totally. Okay. So, if we just try and build here, we see that we no longer have that player X and Y. Sounds like we might be getting a package delivered, so I'm waiting to see if my dog loses his mind and starts barking. Mighty, it's okay. You don't need to bark every time there's a package being delivered. So, over here, this seems straightforward enough. It's just the tile map X and Y off of the player's position. Try and build again and keep going. Line 436. Same thing. Player P, but is this the relative tile X and Y right here? Go to canonical position. Getting real low on the code screen real estate here. So player X and Y. Yeah, I really don't know. What did we say those were on the game state? If we go to the game state, player X and Y. So they're the floats. And really it's just the tile relative X and Y. It's the X and Y into the tile that we are. So I think it's safe to say that this is talking about the tile relative X and Y. Obviously, we'll see if that holds up when we go to build, and it's all completely wrong. Same thing over here. Right? It's like weird. I'm jumping ahead of him because I want to see if my understanding is correct. And then obviously if it's not, he'll do it the correct way. And then, you know, you got to do it wrong to learn how to do it right, I feel like. And so by kind of heading him off at the pass here and just trying to do it myself and go in the direction he's talking about, I'm like actually doing I'm getting a better learning experience out of it, it feels. So same thing here. Whoa. We're going to go player P and then the tile relative Y. And now this is just going off the screen, so I guess I don't know how I want to handle this. Probably this way. That might be as good as it's going to get since we have some really long names in here. And then tile relative X. I think it'll help me if I just continue to remind myself, look, we've got a game world, and it's all these tile maps or tile chunks, as we'll eventually start calling them. And then inside of each chunk, there's like the tile, you know, there's like the bottom of that chunk, which is at 0, 0. And then there's the X and Y tile into that chunk. And then on the tile, there's, you know, all the fractional parts of the tile that you want to index into with the floating point. So just try and remember that structure, because it'll basically be the same thing once we get to 3D. I'm pretty sure. There are far too many X's and Y's for me to keep track of. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm the one working in the code, and if there's one thing that I've learned watching a lot of people code on YouTube at this point now, it's that no matter how good or familiar I may be with the domain or the language or whatever that they're working in, it's very hard, even if I'm like pair programming with somebody at work, right? Like when you're watching somebody else, like they're kind of downloading all of the logic of the program into their brain as they're working through it, and you don't even have that context. It's like how you might get a little bit car sick if you're not the one driving. Like the person in the driver's seat actually knows, you know, the rhythm that the car is going in because they're controlling and braking and accelerating, all these things, you know, happen all at once. How else will the mailman know he's not allowed inside? Well, he ought to know anyways, right? I remember being excited for each video of your playthrough of Telltale's The Walking Dead. Yeah, that was a fun game. Heartwarming to see you've made a great life for yourself. Thank you, Jason. Jason is alive. Well, it's good to be alive, isn't it? Okay, so let's see. Whoa, did not mean to do that. Let's see what else we got going on here. No player tile map X. Yeah, same thing. Get that off the player position, and then same thing for the Y. We only got 2 more errors here that we can see. So I think this is just the same thing. We've done this enough times now. And that might be good. That might be good. Of course, it'd be better if our little player rectangle didn't disappear. That's too bad.
And that'll get the tile map out of the world. And let's see what else we've got here. This is basically just adding, yeah, so this is fine. This is saying player X is not a member of game state. That's fine. Because we now have the tile relative X and the tile relative Y of the player. We can add the DT. So basically we have this motion vector that before we were adding to just the player's offset from the corner of a tile map. Now we're just going to add it to the offset of them in the tile. Right?
So I chose the right member there. Did you see that? Yeah, we're getting the tile relative X and Y off of the player position, which is now represented by that canonical position type. So that's good.
Right, that's all we're going to do. And now we don't have to create raw positions anymore because we already have a canonical position, right? And what we can do is say, okay, so the canonical position that's going to be player left, for example, is going to be equal to game state player P. and similarly the tile relative x, there we go, and the tile relative x there as well. So basically all I'm doing is converting everything over to using those canonical positions, right? And I've got the game state player P there as well. So,
all right, so I just missed this step here where we're going to move away from this raw position understanding that we have of like where we're at in a particular tile map, I believe. And I guess that makes sense because we already have this. We're going to just get it off the game state player position. But this new player X and Y have to factor into that. Right? Because that's what this is doing. This is saying, like, this is the new position that we want to try and take. Isn't that right? Yeah, because we assign all this stuff down here based on whether or not this new... These would all be like tests, I think, really. Because we're going to test if all of these new calculations for the player's position are valid, or rather that there's an empty spot in the world where that new position is going to be. And then it gets mapped canonically. Okay, I see the direction this is going in now. The point is that we no longer would need to do this because we would already have a canonical or global player position, right? So all that does is give us some copies of the... Wow, I just completely spelled that wrong. Gives us some copies of the player position, and then we can modify them to fill up the dimensions of the player. But yeah, he's not using... I mean, I cut him off, so I should just see where he's going with this.
So now I basically constructed canonical positions, but of course they're not really all that canonical at this point because the player left and the player right, and the player position for that matter, have had basically movement done to them. So their tile relative x and their tile relative y may now be outside the boundaries of the tile that they should have been on, right? And so I've got two ways that I could handle that. One is that I could call a function that recanonicalizes them, right? And the other is I could go ahead and just make a function that does the delta, so that from then on, basically instead of just cold adding stuff to it, I could go ahead and do these adds by calling a function that would automatically recanonicalize. I think I probably want both of them, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start with the recanonicalize one. So basically, get canonical position, this guy here, the get canonical position. I think that will basically become a function that just recanonicalizes things, because since everything will now...
Okay. So we're just going to modify the manner in which we're mapping that new position into the global set of tile maps, I think. Maybe I said that wrong, or maybe my understanding is still flawed, but I think that's right. So we can get rid of these and just move those up like he did. And then I'll leave that there for a second before I get rid of it. But over here, this would be like new player P, I think. And he's going to do this recanonicalize proc here is what we'll have, I think.
Now be in canonical positions, we don't really need to pass a raw position anymore. We can just pass a canonical position, and the whole job of this function will basically just be to turn a canonical position, turn something that's been mutated, that's had its relative x, relative y messed with. It'll basically turn it into something that's canonical again, right? So just to make clear what I'm doing here is we're storing stuff. Right now we're storing it to the corner. I think I want to change to storing it to the center, but that's a separate issue. Again, just things that I think about as I'm going through. We're storing things on a tile. This is an individual tile, not a tile map. A tile map is, there's tiles, tiles. We have a particular tile, and we say that the player is on this tile. We are storing their relative position based on where the corner is. And basically what I'm saying here is, well, if we mutate that at all, if we make additions or subtractions to that offset from the upper corner of the tile, if we offset it too much, like we offset it so that it's pointing all the way out here, or if it's pointing back here, or if it was up here, right? Now the tile X and tile Y for that canonical position are wrong, right? So what we want to be able to do is say, okay, we'd like to be able to make just a random adjustment to this vector, and then say, hey, could you now recanonicalize it, make it back into a proper canonical position where the tile X and Y actually reflect the tile X and Y that you're in, and the tile relative X and Y are going to be less than the boundary of one tile, right? So I just need a function that's going to do that. And before, what we were doing is we were calling a raw position something that hadn't been canonicalized yet. I just want to always work with these canonical positions, and then in fact we can even get rid of the name canonical. We can just call them world positions. So we're just trying to move towards that state again we're just trying to slowly sort of work our way up to something that we think is right and good. So what I want to do here is say, all right, I've got the tile map X, tile map Y. Those are going to copy across. In fact, what I can do is just say that the result equals the pose immediately. I don't have to do this flooring anymore, essentially, because I can sort of take a look at, well, I will want to do a flooring of some kind, just not anything like this. So what I want to do here is I want to say, okay, in fact, this is kind of neat. Let me talk about this for a second too. You'll notice that in here we had baked in the world upper left and the world the upper left X and upper left Y, and that was because we were trying to turn pixel locations back into world locations by storing everything such that they're in world locations in the first place, right? By storing the player relative to a tile, we no longer have to worry about what the offset was on the screen. And so we're almost in doing this mutation that we're doing to the code right now and doing this step. We're actually getting for free something that we were saying we had to do, which is start to get away from pixels. We're already taking one step towards that. So it's kind of another sign that we're on the right track, right, when these things start to fall out. So the fact that we're getting rid of that entirely is pretty good there, right? So basically, excuse me. Okay, so basically what we can look at here is we can sort of start to say, all right, what actually is the problem with a canonical position that has become uncanonicalized, right? The rel X and the rel Y will not be within a tile boundary, basically. So if I say pose tile rel X, again, I know in my world definition here, I essentially have a tile size in pixels, right? And that tile size in pixels, I'm basically saying that my tile relative X for my guy should be between 0 and tile size in pixels. If it's not, then I need to make sure that it is, and I need to basically break it up into whatever the part that would have been within the boundary, and then some offset to the tile X and the tile Y to move the actual index of the tiles. Again, this is just saying...
I'm trying really hard not to get caught up on what he just said, and that we don't need to worry about the offset because of this change that we're making to the code. We don't need to worry about that upper left X and Y anymore. I guess it's simply because we're going to have these values available to us, the new tile X and Y available to us, just because of where it's going to be given to us relative to where the world starts without needing to carry that information around, I suppose. I mean, we're going to need to still pass the world in here because we need the size of the tile side. I just don't want to get too hung up on that detail because I can't totally appreciate, why it is. I'll have to look at the diff once we're done with this day to solidify that.
We have a tile X and tile Y that tells us which tile we're in. So if we are, less than 0 or if we are greater than one tile width, we have to start moving the tile X or the tile Y in the direction, however many steps it would need to make it so that we're on the right tile again. So in order to do that, basically what I want to do is I want to take the tile relative X for the position, and I want to divide it by the tile side in pixels, right? That would tell me if that number is a number between 0 and 1, then we're all good. Then we know that we haven't gone more than one tile in a direction. If that number is less than 0, right? Then that would mean that I have gone, back out the back of the tile. And if that tile was greater than 1, then that means that I went too far outside the tile in the positive direction, right? So those are the two cases for me exiting outside of the tile. So what I'd like to do is figure out how many tiles I went, right? So basically I can say here, all right, let's take this pose tile rel X, and there's a couple things. I don't want to spend too much time thinking about this because, again, we're going to make 2 more mutations here. First of all, we're going to move out of pixels, and then I might want to change, like I said, to center relative addressing. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this one mutation here. I'm going to make it in as dumb a way as possible, basically. And I think the way that I want to do that is I essentially want to make a function that's going to do the canonicalization for one coordinate system, because they're sort of separate, right? So I want to do like a canonicalize coordinate, right? And I'm going to pass it the pose. Where is my canonical pose here? I'm going to pass it the tile. Where are we here? I'm going to pass it the tile X and the tile Y, right? Oh, this is, yeah. This is going to be unfortunate too. I wonder if we should just try to make these 2 steps together. Whew. It's rough, but if you think about it, I don't really feel like doing that whole tile map X thing either, right? Because that's going to be a whole thing that's going to go away. It's basically writing a bunch of code that we don't have to write just to stay working with this thing again. Well, I'm going to stick with the plan. I'll do it. I'll do it the way that I said I was going to do it first, and we'll go from there. All right. So I'm going to pass it basically the world and the 3 X's, and then I'm going to have one that does the same thing with the 3 Ys.
Holy crap. So many X's and Y's. But I mean, really, we care about 3 X's and Y's depending on the context of the tile map. We have the tile chunk that we're in. I mentioned this just a few minutes ago. We have the actual tile within the tile chunk that we're in, both in X and Y. And then we have within, once we know which tile we're at, inside of the tile chunk inside of the world, then we need to know how far into that tile to go based on the offset of the tile relative X and Y. Okay, I think I'm keeping up here, but only barely. So we'll go ahead and say that this thing is going to take, well, I don't know what he's going to call these, but I know what they're going to be, right? We're going to have an I-32. Well, I suppose we'll make it an int, and then it'll change it to an I-32 once we start packing things. And then it's only the tile relative X and Y that is afloat. That much I'm able to remember at this point, having written this stuff out enough times. And I misspelled this. Coordiante. Why can't I go back? Tile coordinate. Coordinate? That looks more correct. Okay, so these are all just going to be some kind of X. And then we're calling it for both the X and Y. So, well, I guess I should probably just write it all out once and then we'll go from there. Duplicate it. So we want the tile map X first, the actual tile that we're in on that chunk, and then the relative X inside of that tile. And then we do the same thing for Y. All right. Cool.
Right? And then I've got my canonicalized chord here, which is essentially going to do whatever it needs to do for that. And so I think that means that I'm not going to be able to get rid of as much of the stuff. I won't have to use this one, but I'm going to have to essentially keep a lot of the stuff here that we had, unfortunately. Let's see. So, and this stuff, again.
I see now. So he's going to just move all of that stuff. I don't know about this. It looked like he wiped that out, but move all of this up into here, but we're just going to do it for one instead of for both X and Y. So that just cuts down on, yeah, the bulk of this code because it's all the same operation, whether it's X or Y. We care about it being within the bounds, and we care about if it's going out of bounds, then we adjust the coordinates that we're on inside of the tile map. And then this is going to return, well, maybe he's just going to modify them. Oh yeah, he is. So we're going to have pointers to all of these things. And then I think this code is just going to get chopped in half. I can see where he's going with it, but I don't want to, I keep making assumptions and then having to walk them back. It's going to end poorly for me.
We don't have to worry too much about this, I guess, because, again, we're replacing it all. But yeah, just looking at it here, it's like, wow, what a mess. What a mess, people. This is exactly why I say we want to keep working on this, because it's just there's just too much work being done for not enough payoff. And so it'll be kind of nice to get to the point where that's no longer the case. All right, anyway, so when we recanonicalize the position, we basically need to recanonicalize those coordinates. So let's go ahead and make that be recanonicalized coordinates. They don't take anything. And let's go ahead and grab out what this takes. So it takes a pointer to the world. It takes a pointer to the tile map X. So that's an int 32. It takes a pointer to the tile X, and again, it's taking pointers just because I need to modify them, right? So it needs a pointer to the actual one so I can modify it. That's all that's happening there. Nothing particularly fancy. I'm still going to work with them just as regular, but
I see. So he doesn't make it generic. I guess I could say, yeah, I don't know what else you would say here. Because it's tempting to just call it like tile index, tile map index, but it's not quite right. It's not exactly the index. It might be the index on one plane or another. Yeah, I don't know. There's no better way I can see to make those names feel more generic.
Okay. Well, so if we're still doing it that way and we're doing the recanonicalization, then basically I'm going to have to stick with the same algorithm we were doing before, just in terms of getting things working. Thankfully, we can get rid of the X's and Y's part of thing here. And instead I can just go...
Okay, so that is basically what I thought. So we don't care about the Y. Because again, all of these are just saying the same thing, just twice over. And I think that's good. I think that'll work. So there's no pose here. But we are going to say let's see. So is this going to be the tile relative X right here? I think it might be. I guess I'll wait and see. Again, I don't want to have to keep walking back my bad ideas about where this is going.
So, just using...
If I know for you know, fairly certain where it's going, then I should feel comfortable making that change ahead of time. But if I'm not quite so comfortable, then I don't want to do that to myself and fumble it and have to waste more time just rewriting stuff.
The tile map, the tile, and the relative, right?
Okay, so he does just take, you know, the X off. Yeah, sure. That probably makes the most sense. So instead of changing a result, I guess, right, we do this, but we have to dereference all of these. And it's not specific to X or Y. And then this would be like tile rel, right? Actually, what is this? Tile? Yeah, it's just tile. We got to dereference that as well. I like this dereferencing syntax in Odin. I guess we can just leave that X as it is, actually. I don't know if we're going to wind up keeping that, because he did say that we wouldn't even need to care about that upper left X value, but we'll see. Get rid of all these references to a result. And this is actually starting to look pretty neat. I guess we're going to want to care about whether we're talking about the worlds count X or Y. I can see that that's going to be something. Well, I guess it's just going to be a new parameter, pass in the worlds count. Count X or Y. Like it'll just be like this, right? And it'll be an int or whatever. It'll be something like that, I suppose. And whoa. So this pose here is just the position.x. Was that relative? That was on the raw position. What was it on the raw position? It was F32, which means that's got to be the tile relative, right? Tell rel, that is not what I meant to do. Okay. I see no more errors. Obviously, we're not going to build right after all that. Still got a ways to go.
Okay, so again, this is going to be basically the same. All of this stuff should be roughly the same. Oh, except I'm going to have to pass the world count as well. So let's take a look here, because I don't actually know which one it will be, right? Yeah, you can see. Yeah, you can totally see that, right? Because I've got the world count X. We're allowed to have different count X and count Y. That's another thing that we'll be able to fix, is having our tile maps be square, even though the way that we're viewing them isn't, which again will be kind of nice. All right, so we also have to have the count, the tile count, basically, and that's going to have to go in here. Okay, so there we go.
Okay. Aha, I was right. Feels good to be right. So instead of count X, and it looks like it's just in these 3 places, we replace that with tile count. And I forgot a comma. There we go. Yeah, from that, I think that original code was like 3 times as dense.
When I get rid of all of this stuff, we should basically be able to, yeah, we should be able to get this down to something simpler, and then hopefully, yeah, hopefully this will set us up for doing much nicer stuff than what we were doing. But yeah, perhaps it's a little too early to tell. All right, so now we want to keep our assertions in here. That's totally fine. These are the tile relative. We want to basically assert that the offset is going to still be in range at the end of the day. The tile relative is there. So we've got the tile times the world side in pixels. We've got the X. And so now we just have to kind of reconstruct these things here, which is going to be kind of annoying. All right. Okay, so I've kind of massaged everything out. All right, so we still have our floor in here that we're doing, and we have the X. So this is flooring us based on where we are on the tile map, which is not going to be particularly useful. What we would rather do is just take a look at flooring the tile rail itself, right? What we want to do is floor the tile rail itself. So basically, we're going to divide, like I was saying before, by the tile side in pixels. We're going to floor the tile rail, and that would tell us...
Okay, this is the part that I was not so sure about. I thought that he would wind up just getting rid of this, and I was right about that. But it's because he can just do this with that tile rel value. Oh, but he still has to divide that by the tile side pixels. I think I get it now. I think I understand. Of course, that X is gone, so maybe this is just gonna be this now. I think it's going to be because the tile rel is just going to be into the whole world. It's the X position within the whole world now, I think, is the direction we're going in. And we're going to be able to do that. Is that right? Is that understanding correct? Because this is going to be, this is saying, right? Because before, when we had this X... Yeah, this is the position where the world starts. You know, that's the base coordinate of the world in X, which we've hard-coded to -30. And then the relative tile that we're on, or not the relative tile, but the position inside of the tile that we're in, whether it's X or Y. And this can't be X specific because we're making it generic with this canonicalized coordinate. So we've got the relative tile, or the position we're in whichever plane in the tile relative to the tile. When we don't need to subtract it. Yeah, so that, and this came from, where did that come from? That was the positions X. So it's the same thing. I'm struggling with this one because tile relative X and Y. If it's not relative to the tile anymore if it's global. So I think what I just said there was wrong. I'm gonna have to sit for a bit with this and really make sure I understand why we are able to get away from doing this calculation here. Because when we subtract the distance that we're into the tile away from the upper left X, that's basically saying, that's like sliding the coordinate over to map to that negative. Okay, so I think it's tough because you have to keep in mind like the actual world that you're building that exists in abstract in memory, what you're defining there, and you're constructing all the tiles and the tile map and everything. But then you have to think about, you know, presenting it to the screen and how those two, it's really just about relating those two things to each other. Yeah, I shouldn't waste any more time on trying to think about this because I'm clearly not there yet. We'll get there.
How far essentially we have gone past where our tile X was before. And so essentially this is going to be, it's not going to be tile X, this is going to be our X offset essentially, or our overflow, underflow, if you will, from where the tile should be, whatever that floor is. Because basically at that floor, you know, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, however much it is, that's how far far from our base tile we ended up being due to our tile relative offset. Okay. So all we really need to do then at that point is we need to go ahead, oops, gotta change those. We need to go ahead and take whatever that offset is, and we need to add that in here, right? So whatever the offset is, we're gonna offset our tile index by that offset, right? And then what we need to do is we need to figure out essentially whatever the remainder was, and we can do that again. There'll be faster ways for us to do this in the future, obviously, but yeah, we can do that again by basically saying, okay, whatever the tile relative thing was, it's essentially going to be, we're gonna subtract out of the tile relative that we had, we're gonna subtract out whatever the base of the tile actually was, right? And you can see sort of how I'm doing that here.
Okay.
Don't let this fool you, right? That is just referencing the tile that we're on. And so all we're trying to do here is say, all right, we have a tile relative position. We hope that it is between 0 and the tile side in pixels, but we know that we may have offset it so that it's outside of that range. We want to do the floor, so we know essentially we have a number, -1, -2, 1, 2, 3, however far in tiles we have to go, that offset, however much that offset implies that we would have to go to get to the right tile. We're going to compute that offset, add it to our tile index so that now we're on the right tile, but now we have to reset our tile relative offset so that our tile relative offset is within the new tile that we were on. And in order to do that, I just want to subtract away, right, whatever the... oh, well, I can't quite do that. It's actually the offset. Sorry, that's wrong. That's wrong. Whatever the offset amount was that we computed, we want to get rid of that from the tile relative position, right? Because we're already accounted for that by moving. We moved that many tiles over, so we can subtract away that many tiles worth of pixels, right? And as I'm explaining all of that, again, like, hopefully I don't have too many bugs in there. This is one of those routines that I wish I could concentrate on completely. It's just over the level of where you should be talking when you're doing it.
I'm happy that he is pointing that out because it is hard enough for me to even make sense of what this change we're making, how it's giving us this nice, you know, separation that we want. I'm really struggling with it.
But yeah, what are you gonna do? That's just how Handmade Hero goes. I gotta explain it, or there's no point in doing this. Okay, so recanonicalize chords, right? I've got to pass the tile count X here and the tile count Y, like I said before. Oops, it's not what it is. It's like count X and count Y or something like this, right? Tile map count X. There we go. Tile map count X. Tile maps. There we go. And so get canonical position. So is world point.
I didn't even bother updating these proc calls. So no, I did. But it's saying something's undeclared here. Well, clearly there's more up there. Why don't you show me the error, you fool? And why would you run the PDB? That makes no sense. What is going on here? There we go. And of course I can't scroll up this far either because my mouse wheel is defective and it won't let me scroll. I think it's just because these need to be pointers. I just realized that I'm modifying all of these values, and in order to do that, they need to be pointers. But then I think this new issue that we're having, well, does this, no, that doesn't return anything. World, oh, I didn't pass in the count. Count X and Y. Now that we're nice and wide, we can break these lines up. Cannot take the pointer address. Oh, no. This just needs to be a pointer that we pass in. And then, okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't think, yeah, so this is, I didn't realize that he called this test position. So that makes sense. We can't take the address of a procedure parameter that isn't a pointer. Oh, I see. Yeah. No, okay. It's because I'm not passing in... Does he have a bug right there? Because he's passing in a reference to the position that he's passing in. But that's not the result. He's not taking the result. So maybe he'll run into this here in a second. But I'm just going to trust my gut on that one and say that that's going to have to be... Like, this is the result that we want to return. But I guess maybe this proc won't even need to return the result anymore. I mean, if all he did was pass in this pointer here, yeah, I don't know. Let's just roll with it. And it's saying this is an undeclared name for some reason. Why on earth is that? That's so weird. Why won't you let me scroll up? I wonder if Odin's compiler lets you just show like one error at a time. Okay, so I must have just spelled something wrong here. Recanonicalize coordinate. Oh, I just left it as canonicalize. All right, are you happy now? Looks like it. And then this doesn't exist anymore, but we'll get to that.
Empty is now just going to take a canonical position, right? And so it won't ever have to actually call that. It'll just say is world point empty. It'll pass the position. The position will just work at that point because it's already in can pose. So that's just fine. We just eliminate that entirely. And in fact, we can just eliminate raw position entirely. Goodbye. So entirely.
Make sure I got that right. Yeah, so this is just already what we need it to be. And then nothing else changes. Nice. What's the matter now? Oh, because this has to be tile rel, I think. Raw. I guess it wasn't necessary in the end. What is going on here? Undeclared. Should it just be game state player P then? Is that what we did? Is that what he did? And then this is already... Are we going to call recanonicalize on this? I think we are.
And we just eliminate that entirely. And in fact, we can just eliminate raw position entirely. Goodbye. So let's keep going here. We know that we have to recanonicalize all of our positions now because the game state player P, right, is going to have to be recanonicalized, as are these guys. Player left equals recanonicalized position. And you can see why I say, you know, I mentioned earlier, I was like, I think I'm going to want both functions. You can
okay, so you don't do it in the loop. You do it after you're making the adjustments to these positions. Yeah, because then you know... Yeah, but so if the tile relative x at the left boundary of the player is going off of the current tile, you need to know that so that you can draw that properly. So we canonicalize that, right? And then pass in the world and pass in player position. and the player left position. And the player right. Right? I think this should be reassigning these, if I'm not mistaken. Because we never do anything with the new player X and Y otherwise, I think. Yeah, I just don't think that this is going to be necessary. And then instead of this, I guess this would already be, I think we gamestate.playerp. Yeah, I'm jumping too far ahead here.
I think it's kind of annoying. You have to remember to do this recanonicalize after you do these offsets. So what I'm saying is it's better if we just make a function that does the offset and does the recanonicalize for you, so we know we can just call that and it does the right thing. And I could put a to do in there as well. To do delta function that auto recanonicalizes. Okay. And we'll see that in a second. But what do we need to do? Recanonical position. Did I actually say recanonical? Recanonical position? That's not English. What is going on here? It should be recanonicalize position, right? Although that's not really probably English either. Recanonical position. Recanonicalize position. All right. Function does not take. Is that really true? Is that really true? Takes a world and a position. Okay, it takes a world, which I have, and a position. There we go, and there we go. Player pose undeclared identifier. Well, if it's an undeclared identifier, then I guess I will have...
That's right, I didn't assign those changes. Whoops, we'll just leave that out for now. Oh, plater. That's not right.
Have to agree with compiler. It is true, it was. Player pose. So we don't have to do...
Hey there, Derby. Thanks for stopping by. Hope your night is going good as well.
This again. In fact, this is already essentially all done for us. Oh, duh. Okay, and this is actually, we don't actually need to do this the way we're doing it here either, right? Because we want to do canonical position. We're doing a test position. So this is a new player P, and that just equals...
Okay, that's what I was suspecting. But you still need to calculate this change, right? Well, yeah, okay. Okay. So this is going to be... Why did I copy that? Player P... New player P, or test player P, is off of that. And then we're not assigning these, right? Well, yeah, let's see.
Game state player P. So we're going to do that in a test position first, right? And that's just tile rel x plus equals. This is new player P, tile rel y plus equals. And that's what we're doing our offset there. And then we recanonicalize the new player P. That's what we wanted. And so then if we can actually go there, we don't have to do any of this anymore. Now we can just say, all right, let's go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So I thought that was strange. I was like, why are we plugging this in? I mean, we're not making any changes. It's because it's got to be on this new player position. That makes perfect sense because we did the same thing with the left and right boundaries. And then this has to be off of the new player P. Same thing here. Yeah. I don't know why I have that commented out there.
And set the game state player P equal to the new player P. So we're basically going to accept...
I don't know why my brain is farting like this. We can just plus equals on that. Yeah. Make the code not so wide.
The move there, and that's already getting a little cleaner. It's not nearly as clean as we want it to be, so we've got a ways to go. I've listed many things we have to do now, but we're getting there. Again, lots of baby steps. Great programs get written by lots of baby steps. That's just the way it goes. Sometimes make a big step. Sometimes baby steps. Usually it's a lot of baby steps. All right, so game state. So now we just have to figure out where the player is. And that should be relatively straightforward. For right now, we can assume he's on the screen that we're actually looking at because we always view that screen. So all we really have to do is move him by the tile amount, right, that is in the game state player P, right? So there's the tile relative offset, there's the tile rel x of the guy, and the tile rel y of the guy, so we want to add that in there. We then want to, we have the tile rel x, we now need to know his tile x and his tile y, and those need to get added in, but they need to get added in with a couple things in mind. We need to know the offset.
Did he leave all of this alone? Maybe my mind just totally blanked when he was making the changes in here. Yeah, okay. So obviously this updating all these components individually off of a recanonicalized position off of some raw position doesn't need to happen. Okay. That does feel a lot better. And just like that, that got a whole lot neater. Okay, now we can go down here and draw out the whole player.
It's not nearly as clean as we want it to be, so we've got a ways to go. So I've listed many things we have to do now, but we're getting there. Again, lots of baby steps. Great programs get written by lots of baby steps. That's just the way it goes. Sometimes make a big step. Sometimes.
Bad programs get written with lots of baby steps too. It's kind of you can take many steps and the number of steps does not correspond at all to the outcome sometimes, sad as that may be.
Baby steps. Usually it's a lot of baby steps. All right, so game state. So now we just have to figure out where the player is, and that should be relatively straightforward. For right now, we can assume he's on the screen that we're actually looking at because we always view that screen. So all we really have to do is move him by the tile amount, right, that is in the game state player P, right? So there's the tile relative offset, there's the tile rel x of the guy, and the tile rel y of the guy, so we want to add that in there.
I already did that. Nice. Go me.
We then want to, we have the tile rel x, we now need to know his tile x and his tile y, and those need to get added in, but they need to get added in with a couple things in mind. We need to know the offset of the world, right? The upper left and the upper left x and the upper left y of the world, because that's the basis of the coordinate system for drawing. That's where the tiles start for the tile map that's on the screen. Then we need to add the game state. You can see why I say there's so long to go, right? Because this will all you will see how clean this ends up being, but along the way things can get pretty messy. It's true. Anyway, yeah. Of course, I'm saying that from kind of knowing.
We come full circle. It's because this just gets added at the end of all of that other mapping things into the updated world coordinates. I forgot that. But that's why it doesn't need to factor in at all, because it gets added in at the end. That is neat. I was agonizing over how we were going to be able to do that. It's just that we leave that out of the calculation until the very end when we need to draw the actually start drawing the player after we've been calculating those positions. So that is cool. Make sure I have that updated. We got some mismatch types here. So I still can't go to definition of the game state, but upper left X is a float. The tile relative X, that's definitely a float. All of these are floats except for you. You need to conform. If I can figure out how to wrap a parentheses around you. A parenthesis. Well, we're running.
What things should look like. I guess it's
So I don't see the player, but we're running.
kind of a little bit grim if you've never programmed before and you're going through all this stuff and going, oh my god, when will it ever be clean, or how can I possibly manage all this stuff? But don't worry, you always can get there. You just have to not give up hope. You have to know that there is a good solution out there, and you have to find it. Anyway, what was I doing? Oh, I don't need to do another player P. We already have the player P there. All I need to do is say world, the tile side in pixels, right? Tile side in pixels times that tile.
Okay, well, I jumped a little too far ahead. I assumed that was the whole calculation, but that multiplies it out so that we're doing it in pixels, obviously. I mean, tile side in pixels, it's pretty straightforward. Then why didn't I think of that sooner? Why?
x, and that is going to give us how far over in pixels we have to do to account for the tile that the player is on, right? So there we go. All right. So where to now? World is...
And it's just by the tile. It's just by the tile because because the X and Y offset off of where we're at in the like screen space corresponds to the number of pixels. I guess it does. Right? I see. It's because player width and player height are already... Well, yeah, I don't know. I have no idea how I want to break this up. Stop it. And we still got mismatch types here. So tile side of pixels is an int. Upper left X is a float. So I think I can just wrap the whole thing. And in fact, because that operation is happening before some of this other stuff, makes more sense to just put that on one line. Okay, maybe now we'll get a rectangle here. Oh my goodness, we're back in action. And it works. Well, it works going over, but not back. We can go down, and then that's it. We're trapped in here forever. These 4 walls and 2 doors that we can never leave through. Okay. Not too terrible. Not too terrible.
It's not an arrow.
We'll see if he gets the same problem or not.
Function's not. All right, so we've done a bunch of code changes. There's no way this is going to work because we have surely forgotten something somewhere. But let's go ahead and run it and see where we're actually at. Well, okay, when I said there's no way it was actually going to work, okay, see, there we go. At least we can, I was like, I know there should be no way that this could pop.
I didn't even bother to check if the collision detection was working. It is. Why is it working for me, but it's not working for him? Oh, no. So he has a collision detection bug that I don't have, but then I probably have this bug, and then he doesn't have that bug.
Possibly work. Let's be honest with ourselves. It should be totally impossible. And it was. All right. So what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and start debugging that. One thing that is good to know is like our player drawing is working properly, right? That is roughly where I think we thought that they should be. But I guess we don't know for sure unless we actually test it. So now what we need to do is go take a look at our canonicalization code, get rid of the bugs in it, and then we should be pretty much good to go, and we can continue on with our next changes. All right, so when I do the canonicalization here, basically I want to make sure this is roughly correct. I get the new player P started. I offset it by however much we want him to move. I then ask to recanonicalize that. We do that. I go ahead and I get the player left and the player right, which at this point, these are kind of irrelevant. We don't even have to think about them because the player center should be, oh, that's a typo there. I don't think that probably has anything to do with it, but point being, we do want to test that. So basically, is world point empty?
Ah, I left that in here. Did he do the same thing? Yeah. Yeah. So maybe that'll explain this issue with not being able to go back. Nope. Well, so much for that.
Probably has anything to do with it, but point being, we do want to test that. So basically, is world point empty is definitely not working right, and presumably, since it's doing the same thing that it was doing before, what that means is we definitely have a bug in our recanonicalizer. So what we should be able to do now is we should be able to go ahead and put the guy somewhere that we know is not at all the correct position for him. So we know, that he shouldn't be able to go in there. And now I can just go set a breakpoint and see what was happening, why our canonicalization doesn't seem to be producing the right, because I'm assuming what's happening is the canonicalizer is not actually canonicalizing, it's not producing the right tile X and tile Y for the guy, and it's just leaving the other parts the same. So let's see what new player P is. Yeah, so that's exactly what I thought, right? The tile X and the tile Y are exactly what they were, even though we've clearly gone more than one tile in various directions. So basically, that's fine. So we just know that we've got.
Oh yeah. Okay, so the reason why, haha, I know why this is happening. It's because of this right here. I pointed it out a while ago. Well, I guess, yeah, we never did anything. Oh, we did this inside of here. Right, that's what he started. Okay, now I understand where that came from a little bit better. He started working on this, and then he ripped everything out and threw it in this other proc. And then that's when he did this division of the tile relative, you know, on whatever plane we're passing in here by the tile side in pixels. Now, I saw this and I was like, this looks weird. He passed in the position here and then didn't use the result value when he calls these recanonicalize. So he passes in the position and then he starts modifying the old one rather than the one that he's returning. And so then, yeah, and I mean maybe that explains the collision detection bug, but I'm really afraid that he's gonna go to start. Like, can I go over to the right here? No, I can't even go. So I can go down. If he doesn't have this bug, I'm gonna be in trouble.
A bug in our recanonicalize position. Let's take a real quick look at it just to see if we could spot the problem here. Okay. Oh. Oh man. That's a good start there. Oh, I tell you. I don't think that's the entirety of our bugs, but that's just being dumb. So anyway, yeah. Things that only happen on the stream. What are you gonna do? That's awful. Anyway, point being, what we want to do here is we want to basically say, okay,
I like how he doesn't even explain what happened. He just goes, "That's awful," and then he fixes it and moves on.
Is this part going to work properly? I pass these guys up here to this thing here. I do the X's and the Y's.
Like, I don't think that would have been. It would have been obvious to me why that was so awful if I was. Yeah, I mean, it was when I was going through it, and I was like, "That's weird. Why isn't he passing the result in?"
Pass the result properly now instead of the input. Which
yeah,
is
there you
go.
Ridiculous.
And, yeah, that's. I'm telling you, it is hard on the stream. I make so many mistakes on the stream that I've literally never seen myself make before. Like, that's crazy. Passing the pose instead there. It's just like it's yeah. I wonder if we're gonna have to start doing some things guard-wise. Like, I don't know. Like, I never use const, for example, but const would catch that. I never ever have any const bugs, but that's totally a const bug. And so I wonder if I'll have to start doing things on the stream that I would never actually have to do in real life, just because I can't catch those things when I'm talking. It could be. Well, we'll see how bad. We'll see if we have a bad one. If we have a bad one at some point that isn't trivial to find, then I'll consider it. I'd hate to have to start consting up all my code and making it disgusting, but you know, if you have to program for the bugs you're gonna have for the situation that.
I had to const everywhere in my Zig code because it was required by the compiler. So I was consting all up and over the place. There was no choice but to do so, and I don't miss it. Honestly, I didn't really ever feel like it did a whole lot for me. But there you go. It it tripped him up here pretty bad. Not pretty bad. I mean, it took him all 2 seconds to find the issue, but
you're in. And so if you find yourself making a certain type of bug on the stream, you gotta guard against that type of bug. That's what I would say. You gotta be practical. All right. Anyway, let me go ahead and step on in there and see what happens here. Wow, what happened there? That's not good. That was bad. Whatever just happened. What is going on there? That basically, we moved into it and it locked us into place. You can't feel it because you can't see what I'm typing on the keyboard.
That's like a new Twitter status or whatever, right? Constantly consting. I'm consting all over these codes.
But yeah. So tile X is 4, tile Y is 1. Did we just basically? So I think what happened is, did we just accept a move that we couldn't get out of? Recognize with new player P. So player P. We're not supposed to ever be accepting moves that were invalid. So I wonder what happened there exactly. Something fishy is going on here. What am I missing? So you cannot new player P equals game state player P. We do our tile relative X and Y deltas. We then recanonicalize that position, which is fine. We take the player left, we clone it. That's a incorrect thing as well. This is not the bug that I was just looking at. But these guys should actually be testing off the new player position as well, right? Because we're trying to test the player left from the new place he will be standing, not the old place.
Oh, did I not also make that change? Oh, I did. I did catch that. Man. Thank goodness he's in the driver's seat. I can't even imagine. This is why, like, this is why I'm glad I didn't dare to try and make a game, like, on my own without at least getting a little more comfortable with the domain first, because it's one thing to try and do that. It's hard enough to try and do that if you're not trying to stream it, but to try and do something like that on stream, it would just be embarrassing for me.
Where he was.
It's already a little bit embarrassing at times, but it's good to humble yourself. It's good to always be humbled by your mistakes so that you can learn to do better. And I think also a big part of why I'm finding value in doing this the way that I'm doing it is it's forcing me to really sit back and learn thoroughly what it is I'm trying to learn. I'm always so focused on, like, get to the next thing. I want to learn the next thing, do the next thing, rather than just kind of reveling in the fact that, like, I'm doing the thing right now. I'm doing the thing I want to do. I'm working on a game, however primitive it may be at this point, and I'm learning a new language that is a lot of fun to write. Just enjoy that process for what it is instead of always trying to get to the next stage of, you know, knowledge or whatever, as if that's the end goal. It's the result. It's not the goal. The goal is to learn, right?
It's also supposed to be that way. Okay.
Stay humble. Yeah.
Oh, and in fact, you know what? That actually is the bug. Because that...
Yeah, because there you go. He was assigning the left and right player bounds to the old game state, or rather to the new to the old player position instead of this new one. And so that explains perfectly well why he was getting that collision detection bug, but I'm not. We'll still see about this other bug.
Never mind, that actually is the bug. Because basically what will happen there is it would allow us to do the move, but then the next time we try to test the player left and the right, they'll be wrong, right? They won't be wrong. The next time we try to test the player left and the player right, they'll be inside something and we can't go anywhere. So yeah, that actually was the bug, I believe. So let's take a look here. Yeah. So now we're back to working, albeit not pretty. You know, it's not pretty, it's true, but we are working again. And that's all we really wanted for now. So let's plow forwards. I'd like to get a bunch of this stuff done on this stream if possible, so let's plow forwards. So what I'd like to do now is say, okay, can we go ahead and change things perhaps to...
It really bothers me that he didn't test the tile map transitioning, because now I don't know if his is working and mine isn't, or, you know, if I'm very fortunate and both of us have the same bug. I guess if we both have that bug, or if I'm the only one with that bug, then I can chase it down off stream. But we're closing in on the end of this day, and I just want to try and wrap it up, so we'll move forward.
Being not in pixels anymore, right? Like, can we get rid of the whole pixel situation? And so I think what I could do, at least for the player's motion, right? You know, and so let's say, you know, the player's motion is going to be in meters from now on, and I don't know how fast the player should really move. You know, I feel like players typically run pretty fast. I don't know if 2 meters a second is a good running speed for somebody. How fast is the fastest human? How fast is the fastest human? 44.72 kilometers, so 12.42 meters per second. Wow, that's fast, don't you think? 12 meters a second. All right, Usain Bolt. Well, we probably aren't as fast as Usain Bolt, but since we're a game character, we could move 10 meters per second, right? So let's say we do 10 meters per second here. And I believe, although, where is our time step? Do we actually multiply by the time step anywhere here? Did we get rid of that or something? I thought we were doing that, which was, if you remember correctly, I passed it in here. I remember passing it in here in Handmade Platform. We have a thing in our input, DT for frame. Are we actually using our DT for frame? Yes, we are. Okay, so there it is. So basically, we have our DT for frame. So these are in meters per second if we switch to the player to actually being, excuse me, if we switch all of the player coordinates out of pixels, right? And so if we switch all the player coordinates out of pixels, we'd have player width and player height. You know, to be honest, I don't really know how big of the player width and player height should be. I think we said something like 1.4f was going to be the height of the kid, right? I don't know. I mean, like I said, these are all kind of fungible. So if the player's height was 1.4f in meters, something like this, then their width might be, I don't know, 7.5 of that. I mean, I don't know what people's, you know, these are cartoony kind of characters, so we're gonna have to play with these. Again, it's kind of fungible. We want them to be sort of close, if you will. We want them to be, you know, in the ballpark of real units, but they're not real. It's not photorealistic rendering that we're after here. So if you see our guy now, he's super tiny, right? He moves super slowly, and he's super small. Oh, what happened there? Tile relative is less than world tile.
I think we might have the same bug, and that's probably why he had that assert trip on him. So what happened over here, right, is he defined player height to be 1.4. Is that right? And then, whoa, didn't mean to do that. And then this is just, well, yeah, times player height. 75% of the player height.
In the ballpark of real units, but they're not real. They're not. It's not photo.
Now let's see if I get the same issue there. No. I'm going. I mean, you might not even be able to see on the stream, but I'm a tiny little speck of a rectangle down there. And I'm not tripping that same assert that he's tripping. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. Is it because I needed to travel just straight up? Did he go straight up? Whoops. Nope, straight up works too. What's going on there?
Realistic rendering that we're after here. So if you see our guy now, he's super tiny, right? He moves super slowly, and he's super small. Oh, what happened there? Tile relative is less than world tile. Huh. So this our canonicalization assert fired. Let's find out why. Tile rel.
Is that even what my assert looks like? Tile relative is less than the world's tile side in pixels. Yep.
Oh, it's right on it. So what did offset produce? Offset produced -1. And so this must have been a case where it was right on the border and the floor produced exactly the value, right? I don't know what we want to do in that case. That's a pretty interesting case. So let's see if we can...
So is it just like a freak coincidence, essentially, that the offset just so happened to work out that way?
Okay, let's take a look back out and see exactly what happened here, right? So we have our new player P, which has not been modified yet, and it looks like this. And you can see that the tile relative x, in fact, I don't think we've ever seen this before on the stream, so I'll point it out now. Basically, the tile relative x is a number that's actually represented in scientific notation here because it's so tiny. I don't know if you know scientific notation, but basically, I don't know if we can get Google to show us sort of it expanded out in zeros. Let's hope that it does. Okay, it doesn't. Can you get it to? Well, point being, if you don't know scientific notation, basically the e is sort of just telling you how to shift that decimal point, right? So basically, it's going 7, but it's going 7 this way. So it's getting sorry 7 this way. So it's getting smaller. It's going out this way. So it's like 0.000005, negative 0.0005. A super tiny number. Since it's a super tiny number, at that point when we do our floor f, which I think I can call a floor f in here, can't I? Can I? I don't know if I can or not. New player p dot tile. Yeah, so if we call our floor function properly gives us the -1 that we expected, right? Because we're calling this the c's math function. We know that it's been totally bulletproof, right? It's given us the -1, which is correct because this is a tiny negative number, right? But then what happens is if we take our -1 and we multiply it by the tile size, the pixels on a side, right? Because let's go back and look at. Let me show you the function itself here, right? We have the.
Yeah, that is small. That is such a tiny, difference into the x coordinate of the tile to the left. I wonder if it could be an implementation detail of that floor f, right, versus Odin's floor proc call that I'm using up here, but really hard for me to say.
Tile side in pixels, we're multiplying that offset by the tile side in pixels, right? And so the tile side in pixels is, oops, what's the problem? Expression must have pointer type, but it does. It's the world. What was wrong with that? Tile side in pixels is 60, so it doesn't actually matter. We don't need that, right? So basically, -60 is what we would be adding to this value right here, right? We would be adding, we would be subtracting 60. No, sorry, we would be adding 60 because we subtract a -1 times 60. So we add 60 to it, right? And as you can see here, this is the number that we should be getting. 59.999999999 blah, right? That's the number that we actually want to get. But unfortunately, we don't actually get that number. And the reason that we don't actually get that number is because we can't actually store it in the precision that we actually have for our float. That's presumably doing this in doubles. And I assume that if we actually take and do this entirely in float, that we would not get that value. Of course, I don't actually know how to make it do a cast to float. Yeah. So if you take a look at what happens if we try to store it in a 32-bit floating point value instead of a 64-bit floating point value, you'll notice it just goes to 60. Now the problem with it going to 60, right, is that that's actually technically back on the other tile, right? So what do we do here, right? What's our solution to this problem if we want to be robust in that particular case? And so there's a couple things here. I mean, first of all,
So I was gonna, for a second, my brain was like, is this happening because whoa, that is not what I wanted to do. Is this happening because, the delta that I'm calculating is just so big that I can never land on such an imperceivably small, difference to where it's just, the point is I'm getting a value out of that. I'm never getting to a point where this tile rel just evens out to 60, and therefore, yeah, won't. I'm never getting a point where this evens out to 60. Again, I'm never getting a circumstance where this. Why can't I fucking talk? Where this evens out to 60 and therefore triggers this assert because of the delta, but that is not. The change in player X and Y, I'm pretty sure that's what he set it to. Maybe if I set it to 1 or something, but yeah, I don't know why I'm not tripping that. Other than, again, maybe there's something about that floor call that the value just comes out differently when we truncate it to an integer. I don't know.
I think I want to kind of move this over into the new scheme first before I worry too much about getting all of the numerical stuff correct. So I'm tempted to kind of just say, let's just leave that for now. But what we do need to do is we need to think about that problem will always exist for us if we don't have a way to solve it, if that makes sense, right? We always are going to need some way of figuring out how to solve that particular problem. So we need to think about when we actually do the math here to recanonicalize our numbers. Now, first of all, they'll always be positive, so we do have that on our side, presumably. Okay, I shouldn't actually say that. That's not actually true. They won't always be positive. So we will have to deal with the negatives because you can be outside the tile to the negative side. So anyway, we won't really have much to go on. What we'll have to basically do is figure out a good floating point way to make sure that we can always extract out the whole number part and move it. Now, I'm thinking that maybe what we can do eventually is use like a use something that extracts the fractional part of something, like something like I don't actually know if. What is it? It's like frac. I don't remember what it is. There's a couple different things that we can do that are C runtime library functions, or things that we can actually call in SSE as well that we might be able to use to make it cleaner than that. But I don't know if those would still suffer from that problem. So this will be something that we'll basically have to deal with. I don't know offhand exactly the best way because I don't really want to add. I don't feel like the right thing to do here would be to add a bunch of finicky stuff where we like check again to see if it ended up being rounded or whatever. Because I feel like we should be able to basically just extract the fractional part of the floating point number directly, which you can do. Like I said, I don't remember the mnemonics for it and stuff, but we should be able to do something where we do something that's not gonna, maybe it doesn't involve the divide, or we just do an F mod of the thing instead of actually doing a divide. I feel like there's something clean that we would be able to do there, where if we actually think it through, we won't have to do a bunch of finicky stuff here, right? So I'm gonna put a to do here and say need to do something that doesn't use the divide multiply method for recanonicalizing, because this can end up rounding back onto the tile you just came from, right? And there's reasons to do that too. Again, like I said, we're gonna make this better. The other thing that I don't like is like this stuff here. Well, I guess we'll be getting rid of this. I'm gonna say this only moves like a one tile count in the other direction and stuff like that. But I guess that's we'll be getting rid of that in a second anyway. So we'll just leave with that. But point being, that's something that I don't really like about this at all. That's just not good. So the other thing that I would say here is probably add bounds checking to prevent wrapping. Might be a good thing to do, just for security's sake. All right, so I just want to make sure everyone kind of knew what was going on there, so that I could, when we come back to it, we'll have to handle those things. I just wanted to since we had it happening, I want to take a minute to sort of explain what was going on there. All right, so now that we're starting to move things, let me finish what I was doing, and then when we go back to that, we can also think about all the other stuff we need to do to the tile map stuff. So the first thing I want to do is say, okay, what we need to do here, if the tile relative stuff, if all the tile relative stuff is now actually just in sort of actual meter units, right? Then everywhere that we use a tile relative x at this point has to take that into account, right? They all have to sort of be aware of that fact, which means that these guys now will no longer be using tile side in pixels. They will, to determine whether you move from a tile to a tile, they'll all from now on be using tile side in meters, right? So no more pixels, pixels is gone. It'll entirely be tile side in meters all the time, right? And so that's fine. Now when we come...
Right. So we're getting out of screen coordinates and into world coordinates. That is not so, wow. That is not so complicated that I have to sit and meander for... Why can't I just let me do the thing? I want to do the thing. That is not so complicated that I have to sit here and just postulate for 5 minutes. Of course now, wait, tile side of meters is a float. So, wait, is the in the offset's an int? So now I got to do that. Yeah. Whoa! Now we're teleporting. That's cool. You probably can't see it on your end because my internet is fabulous and won't let me stream at a higher bitrate. But we just started teleporting all over the place after that change. And then, so over here, I'm guessing this is all going to be meters too.
Come down here and we do our testing. The testing should work properly because it's still using it's really, that was the only thing that had to happen for that to be in meters. When we come down in here, we will have to go, okay, now this relative x isn't something that we can just add in, this relative x, relative y, because it is in meters, but we need it to be in pixels. And so what we need is essentially something that does a meters to pixels transform, right? We basically need something that can do meters to pixels, right? Where we do something like that, where we can multiply by that value to get us what we should actually get in pixels, since we want to know where to draw the player. We have where they are in meters, offset from the tile, but we want it in pixels. So we need something that we do meters to pixels. And so how do we actually compute that?
Well, first of all, I got to think about how I want to break that up. Tile x plus, so we're just going to convert this right here, and it's going to be meters pixels that we'll do that with, and then I guess just let it happen. I guess we could leave that on one line. I don't know. All of a sudden, this just feels real ugly. Not that it was pretty before, but good lord.
Right, so we need meters to pixels, right? Again, I always talk about dimensional analysis, right? And this is another case for dimensional analysis. One of the most useful things, practically useful things I learned in chemistry class, dimensional analysis. I don't use chemistry class much every day, but we learned that in chemistry class, dimensional analysis, and you know, it always comes up. So when we compute meters to pixels, I want something that has meters on the top, pixels on the top and meters on the bottom, right? Because what I want to do, dimensional analysis-wise, I'm going to actually, there we go. I want to be able to do something that ends up in pixels, but I have something that is in meters, right, at the moment. So what I need to do is I need to times that thing, right, by something that will produce pixels and cancel out meters, right? So I need something that's pixels per meter, right? How many pixels are there per meter? Make sense? So if I had something that was measured both in pixels and meters, I could put its pixel measurement on the top and its meters measurement on the bottom, and that would give me the ratio that I wanted, right? And it just so happens that we have exactly that. We have the tile side in pixels, right? And we have the tile side in meters. So I can just do this division here, and now I've got a ratio that will always transform one to the other. Make sense? Really, really straightforward. Never gonna remember that that's a world dot in there. All right. So in theory, when I run this now, oh well, that's not very good. That I don't know if you can see that. Is that so funny? Ha! The guy is so tiny.
That was the same thing that I was laughing at earlier. So that's off the world. I think that's right, but this has to be a float. Yeah. That's just long enough to where I don't feel compelled to break it up. In fact, this, I'm going to break that up. I'm not hop skipping around the way that he is, or am I? But yeah, we're still really tiny, and we still can't get out of this bottom map. Hopefully we'll fix that.
We didn't ever change his I'm sorry. We didn't ever change his width and height.
I know that feeling when you just make yourself giddy by doing something that you did not intend. But there's something so visceral about doing it in a game that you're building. That's kind of the part of building games that I'm looking most forward to, is when I can just start experimenting with like the bones of a game and just have fun with it and be silly. And at that point, you know, you can be as creative as you want. Like, let's go chase an idea and just make the most ridiculous thing we can think of. That's gonna be a lot of fun. He's moving around at the fast speed, but he's super tiny. Okay, all right, sorry. We didn't ever change his player width and height. Okay, I get a little bit too much fun out of that. That's pretty funny. So the player width and height we changed to be in meters. So those obviously have to be done with meters to pixels as well, as you can see there. So there's our guy, and off he goes. All right, so we are currently still a little janky here. I don't know. We're moving as well. I see. So over here, yeah, the extent to which we're drawing out simply is not using that conversion. And I guess he puts that up front here. Meters to pixels. Right, to get us out of the world dimensions and back into screen dimensions so that we can draw it. I think I can follow that much. And we're back. But I did something wrong. I did something very, very wrong there, because now I definitely have a collision detection problem. Did I write something in terribly wrong there? This all looks like it's what he did. I guess we'll see if he has the same problem.
As you can see there. So there's our guy. And off he goes. All right, so we are currently still a little janky here. I don't know. We're moving awfully fast, but I suspect that may actually be the correct run speed, because we boosted his run speed quite a bit by switching to there. And remember, we aren't doing our proper collision detection yet, so
okay.
we still have the super awful collision detection in there. I don't know why he's able to tunnel right through those. I have no idea. I certainly don't want to know. So we've broken a bunch of stuff, so I have to go fix all of that. I am not sure what's going on there at all. That's crazy town. But anyway, I suspect that we just had the tile X and Y wrong. So what I want to do now, now that this is sort of working a little bit more, what I want to do now is, you'll notice that I can't really tell. Like, my first thought is, okay, we're going to make a few more changes to this. I have to keep debugging these things as I do my sort of steps to get the code better. One of the things that is unclear to me is I don't know what tile the game thinks the player's in. So what I'd like to do is just add a piece of code really quickly that would like highlight that, so that I don't have to keep like stepping into the bugger to figure it out, right? So what I want to do in here is sort of say like, okay, you know, maybe when we do this test, I'm going to turn the tile like black or something. So I'll turn the gray for the tile black if the row equals the player's row, right? So if game state player p dot y equals the row, and the column equals game state player p dot x, then that would let me see which row and column it thinks the dude's on, right? And that helps me sort of debug that part of the problem. So that's tile x.
Oh yeah. Okay. So forgot that I did this earlier so that I could have a hideous purple tile map, but we need to just kind of zero out that RGB if the tile that we're drawing out is supposed to be matching the tile that our player is on, right? I think that's right. Row equals game state dot player p dot y. And then here we just say RGB equals. Can I just do that? I should have just done that. I don't know why I split up all these assignments or these declarations on multiple lines. I think I could just do that, right? Well, I have to write out all the zeros, which is fine. What's going on here? Well, it's not just X, right? It's tile, yeah, tile X and Y. And that's right. But I can do same thing here. And RGB. Yeah. Well, I have to write out the 0.5s too. Okay. Just flatten that down a little bit. Much better. And now we'll see. Yeah, there's just a little bit of a translation issue going on here. I think it's because we're off of the top left. Like the top left is being treated at the center. Oh, no, it's because we're drawing from the center. Is that right? I don't know. But you can see this is why I'm like colliding. Even though my yellow guy here is like going into the walls, you can see the actual tile collision. Like it's saying, hey, we're trying to go over here. We're just drawing it out to the wrong place, I think is the issue. Because the position is correct. Because you can see it's filling in that tile. Well, I guess it could be both. Yeah. Creesh. I have an interview for a business analyst tomorrow, and I started studying SQL today. Any tips? Am I cooked? I mean, a business analyst. Well, I can tell you this. I worked with an analyst for about 4 years. Wait a minute. I got to ban this guy. You can take your best viewers and shove them up your ass. I have the best viewers already. Okay. I worked with an analyst for about 5 years, and he was actually laid off, but I wouldn't say that's necessarily because of him not knowing SQL, but he did not know any SQL. And he did that job, as far as I could tell, as well as he needed to do that job for the 5 years that I worked with him. I think I can't speak to the reasons why he was laid off, but I don't know. If the role that you're interviewing for is specific to, needing to use SQL to do business analyst stuff, yeah, you might be in a little bit of trouble. But I guess it depends on what else the role is asking for. I mean, lean into your strengths. Don't try to evade highlighting your weaknesses is what I would try to say. Good luck. Good luck in the interview.
Tile Y, right? So let's see here. So you can see that that's like he's offset. He is not properly, it's actually, the tile part is working properly to some degree, but it's offset from where the guy should be. So we basically have a bug, that, and I hope that you can see how easy it was for me to kind of like see what's going on now by adding that debug code. One of the things that is generally true, and you'll see this over and over again as we get into more complicated stuff on the stream, things that could be hard to see or realize are happening if you don't draw them become very easy to see what's happening when you do draw them. And so this is pretty easy for us to see, like, oh, okay, that's totally not correct. So first we have to figure out which is wrong. Is it where we're drawing the guy that's wrong, or is it the computation for what tile he's in that is wrong? And so that's the first thing that we got to figure out. So let's go take a look. Let's see where we're drawing the guy. So we're drawing the guy at the upper left X plus the pixel. So that's the tile at which the guy is. So what I'm going to do actually is, minus the player width and the player height. Right, we got to actually get those. There you go. There's the bug. There's a bug right there for starters.
Let me see here. So hold on. What did he do there?
There you go.
Oh, he had to multiply the player width and height by... Well, what is this assigned to? Yeah, because those are in meters. Because that's... Yeah, okay. Okay. Sure, I can buy that. That makes perfect sense. And I guess I was right. My intuition was right. We were just drawing it out wrong. We weren't converting the whole player width and height over to back into screen coordinates so that we could then draw it out in the way that we needed to draw it out in. And I think that looks good. As Casey, I'm sure Casey was about to show that off. But now we can go back down here, and we're still stuck. We're still stuck in the bottom. I really hope that he has that bug too. If not, then too bad, so sad for me. I'm gonna have to chase that down. Hey Mike, thanks for dropping by. You have impeccable timing. We're just about to wrap up here. And thankfully, I was able to get a whole day's worth of coding done in one stream. That feels good. I want to try and do that as much as I can, but I don't know how realistic that is.
There's a bug. There's a bug right there for starters. So there's our guy. Now he is at least. Man, I gotta kind of slow. I gotta slow him down. He moves so fast now. I can't even get him. Usain Bolt is too darn quick. Is the problem? I'm gonna slow him down considerably. I'm sorry, Usain. You're gonna have a lesser world record, but I need to be able to see as I move out. I just want to verify. So that to me looks like it's correct as far as which tile is being tested. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So that looks pretty good to me. So it looks like we just had a drawing bug again because we have a lot of units here. So as we're cleaning these things up, it kind of gets hairy sometimes as you're trying to clean up. You don't just get clean code for free. You gotta pay your dues. All right. So that looks pretty much right. And then there's got the question of can we get out? Can we move to the next tile map? It doesn't look like we can at the moment for some reason.
What?
So why is that? What's wrong there? I'm not sure.
No way, dude. So he doesn't have the same bug as me, but I guess I should feel okay about the fact that he does have a bug. How come I can go down here, but he can't? So I guess even if he could get down here, maybe he wouldn't be able to get back up still. I don't know, but that's messed up. How did we wind up with two different bugs that are like the same, but they're not?
What is wrong there? So why can't we move to our next tile map? Did we leave the code in for the tile map? We did, right? Recanonicalized chord can still move someone to the next tile map, but I guess for some reason it was not working properly. So that would be let's go ahead and set a breakpoint there. Okay, we're almost out of time. Well, we are out of time technically. So let's go ahead and set a breakpoint there and see recanonicalized coordinate when we move out of the tile map. World count. Oh, another bug. Should not be world count X. It should be tile count. Yeah, it was checking the wrong one. Again, when we did the
okay. Well, that explains why he wasn't getting. That's why he wasn't able to get down into the next map, probably, because I do not think that I had that. But yeah, is that right? Yeah, I didn't have that problem. So that feels good at least. But again, you know, he's the one explaining everything as he goes, and I'm just like, oh, this is what we're doing. I guess I should feel good about the fact that I know enough about what the heck is happening to be able to write things correctly some of the time, so that when he does make a mistake, it just kind of demonstrates to me like, oh yeah, you understand what we were trying to go in, the direction we're trying to go in with the code. You're not just copying him, because that's the last thing you want to do is just rote copy things, because that's, you know, you're not learning at that point. You're just getting good at typing, I guess.
Fraction there. I messed it up. All right. So I think that should probably be... what is going on here? Hello? Yeah. Ooh, that broke something. What did I do? I'm confused. If star tile... There we go. If that is greater than tile count, how is tile count 2? Are we passing a bogus number to this guy? Tile map count X. Oh, even better. So we've got two bugs in here. It's not tile map count X. We want how many there are in each. Yeah. So these are just, again, this is just that was just silly. We want that. That's how many.
Okay, so maybe it's also the fact that he was passing in the wrong value, because I didn't have that issue either. once again, I am reaffirming that I'm learning things. It's happening. I didn't. Maybe he said it, and I just knew. We want to pass in the count x of this. So what this is saying, the issue is that he was passing in the tile map count x and y, which is just the number of tile chunks or tile maps that comprise the entire world. But he wanted these, right, which is saying the number of tiles in a chunk or in a tile map, as the case may be.
Tile maps there are across. Again, you can see why I keep saying I want to clean all this up, because you just don't want to have this many different things all in flight at the same time, right? So I really want to get to the point where everything is much more condensed and we have a reliable set of small numbers of things that work in a particular way. Because before, where there's like the tile maps and the tiles and 3 different indices, it's just, you start making just a lot of mistakes. And so that's why I really want to start condensing everything down to less stuff, because that just, it's much easier to not make errors. All right, so here we go. Now our guy is moving along nicely and happily. We're using only canonicalized positions, so that's good. I slowed him down a bit because the Usain bolting was bolting a little bit too fast, and that's just no.
Oh no, he doesn't have this bug. No, no. I guess I never checked to see if I could actually go over to this one. Probably not. Yeah, no. So I did something wrong, and I do not have time to deal with it, but too bad, so sad. I'll figure it out.
Good. So now he's kind of slowly meandering along. We can see a little more carefully what he's doing, and it seems to work properly for all our previous cases. All right. So that's good. That's not great progress, but it's, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy with that. We've gotten one step down, which is we removed the raw, and we're right on the cusp. We also went ahead and we changed the player's coordinates to a resolution independent one, so we got rid of this to do right here, right? So that's nice. These guys would be, one thing I might say is I'd still leave a to do in here, which is should these be from the center of a tile? And I'm not sure exactly the right way to make that determination, but that I do want to check out. All right, so we got rid of that to do, so that's nice. We've got it down to only one, we've got it down to only one type of coordinate. And we are within striking distance of also packing these guys down, which will finally let us get rid of the tile map stuff and have a nice kind of sparse representation for our tile map that we can always look up into. So I think we're in pretty good shape. I think tomorrow I'll be able to do that stuff, and then we'll be ready to start tackling some of these other issues. So all right, that's not bad. That's not too bad for one day's work. Not too bad. All right, let's go ahead and go off to the Q&A. I
have 0 time to get into the questions, which is regrettable. It's always my hope that I can get into the Q&A and get some insight on stream going, because it's fun to kind of converse about the stuff. But sometimes, it's not always that good. He doesn't always get good questions, and you can tell that he feels like he's not getting good questions and that he's getting frustrated. And it's it's like, man, I wish it could always be a good question too. But it's hard, because people are trying to learn and they don't always know what the right questions are to even ask. And then that you should feel comfortable in asking a question, no matter how dumb it may be, but it's all relative, right, to your experience. If you don't know what questions to ask, then ask bad questions until you can start figuring out how to ask good questions. I guess I can very briefly see if I can figure out that bug. I think what the issue is, right, is that when we go to calculate this new position, we're not walking it back to, we're not rolling it back to the previous tile map properly, right? Or to the next one, as the case may be, because we can't go to the right. We can't go onto the right tile map, and we can't go down. Well, we can go down, but we can't go back up. Yeah. It's once... Well, I think the recanonicalizing must be wrong. Because then when we come in here, the is world point empty hasn't changed at all. Well, I guess it did a little bit, because we're we got rid of that canonicalization of the coordinate that we were then passing in to get the next tile map. Yeah, so I think what this means is that we're getting the right, none of this logic has changed. So it has to be somewhere in here that things went awry. And if I go back up to that procedure, we pass in the world, and this indentation got messed up somehow. We pass in the number of tiles in the plane on the chunk that we care about. The tile map. Actually, I guess this didn't change. Yeah, no, this did change. I guess it didn't even register to me that. Oh yeah, so this is okay. We're calling it a tile map here, but we use this to refer to like the actual tile map struct in different places. It's kind of messed up. And then this is the tile within that tile map that we're on, and then this is, you know, how far we are into that plane on that tile. So we get the offset by dividing the relative tile by the tile sided meters. We add that offset to the tile we are in the chunk, and then we subtract the relative tile we are by the offset times the tile sided meters of the world. We're asserting that where we're at on that plane that we care about for the tile relative to the tile is within the bounds of a tile. And then we say, oh, this was wrong. Was this it the whole time? I think that was it. I transferred all these over when we wrote this proc, but I incorrectly was comparing the relative of the tile we're at. We're already, yeah. So that makes perfect sense. Because why would we be comparing the you know, where we are relative into the tile and then go and change the tile that we're on? That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's if the tile that we're on within the chunk is now negative, it means we need to go back a chunk in that plane. And so then we say, hey, add the width of the chunk to the tile we're on so that we get, you know, basically to the end. We've now wrapped onto that other chunk, and then we just need to, you know, assign those values correctly. And it worked going down to the next tile map, right? Because we weren't doing this here. We didn't have that same bug in there. So yeah, I think we're good now. That was not too painful. Thank goodness. I'm just going to make sure that it worked. We'll do a nice little loop around our tile map, or our tile world, I should say. Yep. Been good. I know Casey likes to keep him going slow, but we want to go fast, right? It's fun to go fast. I'm going to bump that up to 12 so I can very quickly test this out. I want to go fast. Make a nice big loop around the world. And we're back where we started. Awesome. Okay. I would have hated to end the stream there with a big old nasty bug. Am I making a coordinate system? We are making a very rudimentary tile map system, I guess you could. There's coordinates involved for sure. But yeah, we're speedrunning. We're speedrunning this game that I built. No. So if you haven't heard of him already, this is down here in the bottom right. This is Casey Muratori. About 10 years ago, he started a series called Handmade Hero, where he builds a game from scratch in C-styled C++. And I've always thought it was an awesome series, and I've always wanted to take the time to, you know, learn from him and learn games programming from him. And so I'm coding alongside him, but I'm not doing it in C. I'm doing it in Odin, this language right here. So it looks a bit different. You know, the syntax is pretty similar at times because Odin is heavily inspired by C in many, many respects. But for instance, like pointers just look a little bit different, and dereferencing pointers look a bit different. So the idea is not just to build a coordinate system, but a whole game, or at least learn what goes into building a whole game, right? And my aspirations are that at some point we'll veer out of following the series one-to-one every day. And for instance, once we get to the GPU accelerated stuff, it's my goal to, because I'm pretty sure he does it all in OpenGL. It's my goal to then take that OpenGL stuff, re-implement it in Vulkan, re-implement it in maybe DirectX or Direct3D, and you know, just kind of have fun with it. Go chase what looks like fun to work on, essentially. But for now, I have to just humble myself over and over again here on stream and kind of learn all of the bits and pieces and get to the point where I can allow my creativity. I can just kind of chase the creativity instead of trying to figure out how to do the thing. And so, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Thanks for hanging out with me on stream. Those of you who have been here the whole time, or if you just dropped in a few minutes ago, I'll be live again tomorrow at some point, starting around the same time, roughly, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And we'll move on to day 33, but this was day 32. So keep on keeping on. See you tomorrow.